Welcome to the Business Vitality Podcast. My name is Catherine Cantey. I am the host and an executive coach. I work with teams, individuals, and leaders to help create a measured leadership change. We do that using practical application, and our clients are creating 100% measured results as seen by those around them. Not necessarily what I think or what they think, but what the other people are seeing. And they are being recognized for the hard work that they're doing. If you're interested in learning more about some of the work that we're doing, you can learn more at catherinecantey.com. I would love for you to subscribe to this show, to Business Vitality. This is my way to continue to pay it forward and share business best practices. Stay tuned and listen to the interview. Thanks for being here. Jason Roberts, you are the owner of REI Blueprint, found on the web at jasonroberts.tv. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I liked our pre-recorded conversation. You've got my brain going in lots of different ways, which I like. But before we get into it, can you talk a little bit about REI Blueprint and what you do with that?
Sure. REI Blueprint is an education company, I guess, at its whole. It kind of happened on accident, I guess, like a lot of small businesses do. You know, I built to my early 20s, got really big. 2007 came and wiped us all out. It was a mortgage company. We had a little over 100 employees, and that we went from 100 employees and bringing in millions of dollars in revenue to waking up one morning we couldn't find loans. Everything that I had spent all that time building was kind of like eroding in real time. And so we got to the other side of that. We never actually had to close, and I wanted to. I really love business. I love growing business, but I was just done with grinding at 5:30 in the morning until midnight every single day. I was a slave to my business. I didn't have it set up correctly. And so I learned how to invest in real estate. I learned how to flip houses. I started learning about apartment buildings and that kind of thing. We did well. We did 111 houses our very first year. And some of the mastermind groups that I was in own these clubs called REIAs, like Real Estate Investor Association. They're all over the country. And they started asking us to come speak and teach other people how we did that. And, I didn't have a course, I didn't have a training, I didn't have anything, like just teach heart and tell them, how we never flipped a house before in our life. And we did 111 houses and dug ourselves out of the 07 mess. And so, yeah, we've grown since then. I think we've probably had a little over 10,000 people come to our event over the last 12, 13 years. And definitely a passion of mine. I think you can make all the money in the world, but I know it sounds cliche, but like when you're actually able to see somebody's life transform for the better, like I can't get that same reward from flipping a house. So yeah, that's what REI Blueprint is. We teach anything from single family fix and flip to shared housing to multifamily to, all things real estate investing.
What are some of your one or two best lessons learned when it comes from that real estate flipping?
Wow. One lesson that I've still held to this day is that I don't like debt, and people will argue, we can have the whole good debt, bad debt conversation. And some people have resistance to that, but coming from somebody that went from being a multimillionaire to being homeless, in a 2.5 year period of time when the market collapsed in 07, none of that would have happened if I wouldn't have been. And I wasn't debt heavy, like out of whack. I didn't have things that were that far out of line, but when you're losing more money than you're making, those things can happen. And so for personal debt anyway, now we have, we own a assisted living facility. We have other businesses that we're owners, operators of, that have some debt on them. But one for me was like, stop with the personal debt. If I can't write a check for it, I can't afford it. If I want a nice truck, then I need to be able to write a $100,000 check, not pay the $2,000 a month payment. So that was one really good lesson for me. I think another good lesson was, like, we talked about this a little bit before, but you're only as strong as your team. You're only as strong as the ones that you surround yourself with. And just working with other businesses, I used to do this myself, and we still probably all do it to some capacity, but like keeping people on the team longer than they should be, and not spending enough time developing the good ones. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on in business was I invested like the majority of my time working with the people who, in the loan business, our average LO closed 2 or 3 transactions a month. And then I had the whole 80-20 rule. And then I had a handful of loan officers that were doing 20, 30, 40 loans a month. And so I spent all my time with the 2 and 3 loan a month people, trying to get them to 5, and then kind of realizing that they have to meet me in the middle, like they have to want it as much as I want it. And so, making sure that I'm investing in my people and investing in their growth and their success, but also investing in people that want that same growth and success also. That's kind of like a perfect recipe of show up for them and build them and grow them, but also at the same time, they've got to want that too.
Okay, so I got a lot of questions from this.
Yeah.
The first one is that I hear from clients is, but Mark's been with us for a long time, and I mean, I can't let him go, but he's not in this culture anymore. He's not growing because I need to be able to grow the business and take it to the next level. What am I going to do? I can't fire Mark. So Mark's the one doing 2 and 3, loan closings. What's your experience with that? I imagine it's pretty hard in the beginning.
It's super hard because like if you really love business and you love your people, it's like a family to you, and so there's a personal aspect of it too, and I struggle with that a lot. And so I think first and foremost, what can I do to shift Mark's perspective? What can I do to shift to grow Mark as a person? How can I change his focus and change his state? And can I get him into the place where maybe he's not right now, but can I get him into the place where he believes in himself and he wants more and he wants to succeed and he wants to add value and he wants to do those things? I guess that would be my first thing, because to your point, like I don't want to get rid of Mark if I don't have to. But second thing is, like, if you read any Jack Welch books, I mean, he's regarded as one of the best CEOs in American history. And GE used to eliminate the bottom 10% of their staff every year. And so there's something to that too, right? And like when I say you're only as strong as the weakest player on your team, I mean, think about that in any aspect. Think about it in like a professional basketball team or, a football team or whatever. And you've got one person that just doesn't care anymore and is not carrying their weight, that they would cut that person quick, no matter how long they've been on, if they just weren't trying, if they weren't trying to grow. So I think we kind of have to balance that, family, we love our people environment with like, we still have to grow, we still have to succeed. So I guess the answer, I'd see what I can do to shift Mark's focus. What can I do to get Mark back on track? Why is Mark disengaged? Why is he not as motivated as he used to be? And what can I do as a leader to pull that back out of him, or maybe put him better in that place? But then also some parameters and some short leash around it too, because like that can't be a 3-year process to see if Mark comes back to life.
That is a great point. Mark doesn't get 3 years to decide what he wants to do. It sounds like you believe in accountability.
1,000%. Yeah. I all the action in the world without accountability is to me can spell trouble. We have I mentioned our assisted living facility. We have a 94-bed assisted living facility in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when we bought it, it was full. And within 6 months, we had 11 vacant beds. And when you're billing at $4,000 a month a bed, that was like $50,000 in revenue that instantly disappeared. And nobody even noticed. Like, we didn't even know. Because we weren't tracking those. It was a metric that we didn't think we needed to track right after we bought it. And I had never owned an assisted living facility, but one thing I always do in any new business is go in and establish what those things are. What are the KPIs or whatever you want to call them that we need to track in our business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to make sure we're trekking in the right direction. And it's so crazy because, then we go in and we put metrics around admissions. We put metrics around how many referrals are we getting per week? Out of those referrals, how many assessments are we scheduling? Out of the assessments, how many did we accept? Out of the ones we accept, how many moved in? Out of, the whole bit. And within a couple of months, we're back to completely full, 0 vacancy. And then we take our eye off of it and make it something that only has to get reported once a month. And then we're back to 7 or 8. Like you can watch it. You can watch it just fluctuate based on the amount of focus that you put on it. And it sounds crazy, but like, level 10 importance, I believe in any business is like, what are the things that drive the success of your business? What are the things that drive revenue? What are the things that drive you towards your goals? And then measuring and monitoring those things, honestly, on a daily basis. We even went to a weekly basis for our admissions, and it got out of whack. When we started making them report every day, okay, how many referrals came in today? How many assessments did you schedule? How many did you do? It just where focus goes, energy flows, right? So it keeps a focus on the things that we want.
And you got to prioritize. Different times you got to prioritize at different things, different items that are going on in the business. So how do you shift those priorities around? Because like you said, you go over and you work on XYZ, but then admissions, like you said, kind of got out of whack, but then you reprioritize. Talk about prioritization if you can.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I mean that's exactly what we're dealing with. Michelle is the head person who deals with our admissions in that role, and that's why we were struggling. Is when we were putting a focus on it, she would put the focus on it. When the focus became, she has other responsibilities. She's one of our 3 administrators, and so she has other things she has to do. So we have to, and part of that is make sure that the people are being cared for adequately. And so how do you balance can you answer the question, what's more important, bringing new people in and keeping it full, or keeping the people that we have happy? And I don't know that there's a correct answer for that, but I think as far as prioritization goes, is like structure and understanding, okay, needs to be a focus, and it needs to be a focus every day. Then let's organize that in a fashion of, if we focus on it for 2 hours per day, is that enough to keep us in line and keep us on our goals and keep us on our metrics? And then if it is, how much time a day needs to be allocated towards resident care and improving quality of work, and how much time needs to be, structured with managing people and really organizing it in a much more efficient way. We bought that business from a guy who built it from scratch. He had a daughter who was developmentally disabled, and he started the first home just to care for his own daughter. He was a nurse, and his wife worked in the hospital too. And so he built this into 10 different homes with 94 total residents. And he was a great guy, but he didn't run it as a business. It was very reactionary. So when we bought it, we had to go in and basically rehab this business. We had to go in and set all these things up from the very beginning. And so those were things we had to figure out. Is to your point, is like, how do we keep focus on this without letting this slide? And how can we reposition? And how can we better understand what Michelle's really, really good at? And let's take the things that she's not really good at off her plate, and let's hand those to somebody who is really, really good at them. Because when you're really, really good at something, you get it done in a fraction of the time than if you're not, right? So some of that's is reorganization as well, I think.
All right. You said you're talking about time. If it takes 2 hours, can we get this done in 2 hours? Time management. Do you think time management is at the core, at the base of everything that you're doing when you run these multiple businesses?
For me, absolutely. One of the best pieces of business advice, and some people may have resistance to this too. So I was the workaholic guy. I was the one that came to work at 5:30 in the morning. I left at midnight. First one there, last one to leave, year after year after year after year. And I sacrificed the whole reason we open a business, so we say, is for freedom, right? So we can have more freedom in our lives. So we can spend more time with our family, our friends. We can live life kind of more on our terms. And I don't know about the rest of your audience, but what I found is that I gave away all my freedom at first. When my first 10 years in business, I was an absolute slave to it. And I had a mentor come to me one time, and he was kind of being an ass. And he said, Jason, you think you're smart and you think you're special because you're good at business and you're good at growing these things. He's like, I know all kinds of guys like you. And he was challenging me. And it was the first time I ever met him. And it was super not cool, to the point where I eventually asked him to leave the office. And then I called him back and realized that he was right and I was the ass. But anyway, basically the moral of what he said was, I know all kinds of guys that figure out how to build multi-million-dollar businesses, and they neglect everything that matters most to them in their life. They neglect their spouse, they neglect their kids, they neglect their personal health. He was talking to me like that's exactly all the things that I was doing. And he said, what would be really impressive? If you could figure out how to grow businesses, serve more people, change more lives in 3 or 4 hours a day instead of 12 or 13 hours a day. Now that would be impressive. What you're doing right now, there's all kinds of people doing that, and you're going to regret it one day. And I was mad. I was pissed, and when it happened. And then after the fact, I was looking at my life and I'm like, oh my God, he's right. This is me. And that, as simple as it sounds, that question of how can I grow my business more with less time? How can I serve more people with less time? Asking better questions, we get better answers. And that took me from working in my business to working on my business. That took me from being like a business operator to a business owner. And that's when things really started to grow. That's when things really started to expand. And that was so contrary. It was just beat into me from the time I was a kid that your job as a man is to work and provide. And I agree with that. And I equated hours, and I equated time to work and provide as opposed to the result. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I struggle with it too. We've been conditioned to think we need to work from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 8 to 11 because you got to entertain clients for dinner.
That's right.
We're just conditioned that we need to be sitting in a chair or in front of a client at all times. And the result is going to get there. And there's ways to be able to not do it in as much time. But I think a lot of people struggle with probably what society conditions us to think about. And then also the fact that we probably would work smarter if we were only given 3 or 4 hours a day.
That's it. You start making different decisions. You start delegating. You start being more resourceful. You start operating from a different pattern. It was an absolute game changer. Something that sounded so simple was an absolute game changer for me.
How many years ago was that?
That was in 2010, 13, 14 years ago.
Okay. How many businesses do you have today?
Six different companies.
Yeah. So time management probably better than the majority of the world out there, because you've got multiple you just got multiple businesses with multiple outlets, multiple probably problems and opportunities. And you probably have really good people working for you, if I had to guess, because you don't get to grow like that without really good people.
You have to have good people.
All right. So what are your thoughts around you build the people and then the business builds itself? Or do you think you just got to focus on the grind of the business and you don't have to worry about training people quite so much?
I have always approached business from how can I create a win-win scenario? How can I create an environment where my entire team wants to win as bad as me? And I have found that, because you hear people say, well, no one's going to care as much as you. It's your business. That no one's going to. Well, I mean, if that's what you tell yourself, then that's what you're going to get. But I don't necessarily believe that's true. I believe that you can create a culture where people care as much as you. And part of that is the right people. And part of it is how you show up as a leader, right? So if I have to show up in that way. I have to instill in my team and the people that are following us that this is our standards. This is what we want to do. This is the dent we're trying to make in the world. This is how we show up. And so much of that is managing emotional state, what you focus on, the meaning that you give it, and the action that you take because of it. And so those three things, what you focus on, the meaning you give it, and the action that you take, are three integral parts of how I try to shift culture the best that I can. And we all have patterns of that. We have patterns of focus. We have patterns of physiology. We have patterns of language. All these things are kind of built into us from the time we're kids. And so if I can influence, not control, but if I can influence what my team is focusing on, if I can pull out of them what meaning we want to associate to that, and then understand the action that we should take because of it, I believe that we can keep people in a state, and maybe they don't care about it as 100% as much as I would, but maybe I feel like we do a really, really good job of helping them understand. Again, when we took over that assisted living facility, the old owner, he micromanaged. He didn't empower people. He didn't build, he didn't know. It wasn't his fault. He just didn't know. And so that whole rehab of taking out the 10, 12, 15 years that all those employees had under somebody who wasn't doing a great job as a leader, no disrespect to him, he just wasn't equipped. And then reinstilling belief in themselves, confidence in themselves, the ability to make decisions without having to what would you do, and making it not a dictatorship, but a team environment where they know that I have their back. They know that I trust they're allowed to make decisions. They're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to figure it out. I'd rather you make 5 mistakes to get to the right answer than sit in the middle of the road and can't decide if I should turn left or turn right. We've got to be constantly improving. When we make a mistake, we evaluate it. We figure out what it was. We change our approach, and we try again. We go right back at it.
This takes time, and a lot of leaders don't always make the time. They have time, but they get reactive instead of proactive, is my observation. For a large number of business owners or leaders that are out there, time with your key leaders. How many key leaders do you have that I guess report to you? And then how much time do you allocate to those people each week, or however you break that out?
Yep. So we have a owner leadership meeting every Monday morning from 9 to 11 Central on the assisted living thing. We've got it's not the biggest business in the world, but we do I don't know, about $5 million annually. We've got about 50 employees. But I'm not there. You know, I'm between St. Louis and Michigan. I don't live in Milwaukee, so I don't report, you know what I mean? But so there's a whole business that's running that I am not physically there, which is the first time I'd ever really done that. You know, we've got remote employees and things like that in other companies, but like this was a brick and mortar business that I've been to a handful of times, and so that was kind of a furthering my skill of like being able to prioritize and manage time and lead, you know, by example, but from afar. So that goes on every Monday, 9 to 11. And that is all of our operations staff, our management staff, and our ownership group. And that really is focused on exactly those things, building that team up, understanding, you know, what went well last week, what went good, where did we struggle, how can we improve, what can we do better, how can I better serve you as a leader, what do you need from me, here's what I need from you guys, and having that time that they know dedicated every week. And what that also does is prevent my cell phone from constantly ringing day and night with all these questions, because they know like if it's an emergency, it's okay, but there's protocols, and I'm kind of the last of the protocol. But they know that they have that dedicated time every week, and they know that that's the appropriate time to address things. So if it's an emergency, that's one thing. Anything else, make a list, document it, keep it ready so that you can present it on next Monday, because that's when we deal with things, you know.
Do you spend any one-on-one time with any particular leaders and other businesses just to continue to grow them, or what do you think on that?
Yep. So you know, we have a whole sales team for REI Blueprint. And my business partner, Rachel, she's 50-50 business partner in the majority of the companies that I have. And so she is, you know, I'm definitely more the jump out of the plane, build my wings on the way down, like visionary, like here's where we're at, here's where we need to go, here's the plan to get there. She's the one that takes my craziness and says, okay, that's real great, Jason, but we got to do this. She turns it into a system. She turns it into a process. And, you know, the balance of those two together, I think creates a really good environment or a really good system. So, you know, Rachel and I meet every week, and every different company that we either own or we're involved in, that same protocol is kind of happening, of meeting with the key leaders. Where are we at? Where are we trying to go? What's working? What's not working? What can we improve? Test measures. Let's and then come back to it again next week. So we're always looking at, like, did this little tweak help? Did it hurt? How can we reapproach? How can we change? How can we improve? How can we better serve our clients? How can we create raving fans? How can we add more value to their world and their life? You know, all of those types of really good questions, I guess. We try to ask really good outside of the box questions.
Rachel sounds like a good implementer, which works well with a visionary. So that's 100%. Awesome. Tell me, you said something about the cell phone. The cell phone doesn't ring as much unless it's an emergency. I am noticing some people can't put the cell phone down, and people are calling and texting and Slack channel and everything else. And I'm trying to talk with them as an executive coach. I'm like, these people are the monkeys running the zoo, and you've got to flip this mess around. This is my opinion of, you don't respond to every single phone call. So,
well, you're training that behavior, right? No, go ahead. Yes. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like you're training that dependency.
Yes. And you're losing empowerment. You're losing that decision making. Have you always been able to do that, or did you just go cold turkey? What was that like? Because there's a lot of people that are suffering from whatever disease that is of response to the cell phone.
I'm recovering addict of that. So, I mean, you're talking to the guy that, like, I think the only reason I have some of the advice that I have is because I've just screwed this up so many times that I got to the point where I'm like, no more. I can't take it. I mean, this used to ring sun up to sundown and then some. I mean, I was chained to this. Now I really would rather throw it in a drawer and forget that it exists. My Facebook got hacked a couple of days ago, and I'm kind of like, I can't log back into it. I'm like, this is the best thing that ever happened. Even though my business is, requires social media, so I don't know what we're gonna do. But it's been a blessing to not even have that on my phone. But another good lesson learned from a mentor of mine. We were meeting in my office, and every 5 minutes the door would open. Hey, Jason, I got this problem. What should I do? And I'd answer the question. The door would shut. 10 minutes later, somebody come in. And so we couldn't even have like this hour-long meeting we're trying to have because we get just getting constantly interrupted, which is the same as being constantly interrupted on this. And he goes, how much? He said something effective like, is this what goes on in your world all day, every day? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm a full-time adult babysitter. You know, I mean, that was my map of the world at the time. And he goes, well, you've got really awesome people. Why have you, he says, why have you trained them to be so dependent on you? And I was like, I didn't train them to be dependent on, like, this is my job, right? I'm supposed to answer I'm their leader. And he's like, no, man. You're paying people 6-figure salaries. You've got all these awesome, and they can't order a roll of toilet paper without your sign off. Like, this is crazy, Jason. And so I'm like, well, then smart guy, tell me what I should do. And he said, next time somebody comes in, when they ask you a question, I just want you to respond back with, well, what do you think you should do? And whatever they say, just respond with, then do that. And so Julie came in and, interrupt me. And I'm like, well, what do you think you should do, Julie? And she like a ton of, like, she couldn't even believe that I asked the question. And she's like, I was like, well, what would you do if it was your call? And she's like, well, I would do this, this, and this. And I was like, all right, well, we'll do that. And she like looks at me with this horribly confused face, like, what the hell happened to Jason? And so, this happens 2 or 3 more times. And the third time when I was like, she opens the door and it's like, hey, never mind, shuts the door. So like in that 1 hour meeting, just that little bit of like empowerment retrained her in 20, 30 minutes of coming in. She's like, never mind. She knew the new deal. She was empowered to make decisions going forward. She knew that I trusted her decision making, and she felt confident with the ability to make the decision and that I wasn't going to come down on her. So something like that simple. And everybody says, well, you can't do that in my business. You can't do that in this. And I'm like, I promise you can. It's just a whole different, it's a pattern interrupt from the pattern that you've been running for however many years in your business. For you and them.
Yes. Okay. So mindset, obviously you've gone from, you were doing great. 2008 hit, you had to regroup. You got back on within a year is what I read. You were back up, fully going, which I do have a side question. Is it easier to make that million after you've already made the million that first time? Do you think it was easier that second time when you had to do it?
So I was telling myself this story. It was a 2.5-year period of time that I went from, top of the world to basically homeless and bankrupt. We went from bringing in millions of dollars a month to losing $100,000 a month every single month. And there's nothing we could do to fix it. And I started telling myself this story as I watched everything that I had worked for get stripped away from me, that I had lost everything. I kept, everything I've worked for is gone. Everything I started the story of this. And I woke up one morning and I was like, you know what? This is bullshit. I haven't lost I've lost everything financially. I lost everything monetarily. My cars got taken away. My house got taken away. That type of thing. But what didn't get taken away from me is all those lessons, all that business knowledge that I learned, all that leadership that I learned, the passion. That didn't get taken away from me. So all I've really lost is monetary stuff, and monetary stuff is easy to get. And you know what I mean? So I had this whole like shift in my thought process around, no, this isn't true at all. The things that I implemented to be successful the first time will work again, and no matter what business it is or anything else. And so that whole mindset shift is like I am not my circumstances. Woke up one morning and said, we've got to do something different. We got to change our approach. We got to do this differently. And so I would equate it kind of like to, riding a motorcycle or riding a bike or flying a plane or something. Like, once you learn how to do that, you cannot do it for a year, and I can hop back on my motorcycle and I might be a little rusty for a second, but within 20, 30 minutes, we're going. And I think the same thing happens in business when you understand like the mechanics and the processes and the things that you need to do in order to have a successful business. Those things are duplicatable anywhere you go. So I'll work with anywhere from a doctor's office to a medical spa to a home builder in Texas to, and every single one of them say, you don't understand, Jason, you don't deal with this, you don't deal with that. And I always respectfully say, no, you don't understand. I'm not here to teach you how to be a better doctor. I'm here to teach you how to extract yourself from this business that you work 80 hours a week in and turn it into a real business that you can grow, that you can scale if that's what you want to do, all while having a reasonably normal, like happy life at the same time, that you're not sacrificing everything else in your world.
So it sounds like you're teaching the mindset, because that is a big mind shift.
For sure it is. I mean, I think I heard Tony Robbins say one time, 80% of success in anything is psychological and 20% is mechanics. And I just 1000% believe that, like, the right mechanics will get you. You have to have the right mechanics to get to where you're trying to go. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that the mindset in which you approach those mechanics, the mindset in which you approach your day, that you approach client conversations, that you approach leading your team, if you're approaching that from a level 10 peak state of we can conquer anything, today's going to be the best day of my life, we're going to improve everything that we touch, leave everybody better than we found them, or if it's a place of scarcity or fear or frustration or anger, like, those different versions of ourselves get drastically different results in life and our relationships and our friendships, all those things. And so I think mindset is the core, most important thing of all of it for myself and for our team and our people and everything else.
All right, we're starting to wrap up. You are a learner, is what I'm observing.
Love it.
And I would love to know, where are you learning? You've talked about a couple mentors. I imagine you've got a couple mastermind groups that you probably participate in. Probably a few good books, if I had to guess. Will you tell me where you're learning?
Sure. I mean, I've been a lifelong fan of Tony Robbins, just from like a mental state standpoint. That has impacted my life in a positive way, probably more than anything else. Wayne Dyer's is really good. I don't know for like mindset, if you guys know who Dr. Joe Dispenza, but there's a really good documentary called Rewired. I think it's on Gaia. You can probably find it some other places, but he explains, like, some people get, when I talk about mindset, I talk about, some people can think that's woo woo, like, oh yeah, like I'm just going to think positive thoughts and good stuff's going to happen. It's not really that, but there is a biological process that happens when we show up in a different place. And, I've read every autobiography I could ever find since my early 20s, because I don't have a college degree. I don't have this fancy education. I didn't have people to look up to when I was growing up as a kid. I didn't have any of those things. And so I had to seek that out. And over time, you start to see, like, what do the top 1% of 1% of income earners in the world have in common? The number one thing that I found that they had in common is the ability to control their own state, their own emotional state of how they show up. Number two thing that I saw that they all had in common is the ability to control the emotional state of those around them, up and down, right? Sometimes we need to bring somebody down in an emotional state in order to bring them back up. And so I think, like, what can I do? What can I do to show up at a peak state more hours of my day? What are some of those practices that I could put into my life to change what I'm focusing on, change the meaning that I'm giving it, and then therefore take different action?
Okay, you flip houses. I've built a few houses in my day and flipped and all that. The emotional state of a job site is, I think, or maybe it's only me, is a roller coaster. How do you control the emotional state with all your stuff?
I guess I should say, I try to find fun, happy people that also have super high standards, which is not easy to do. We've always had a great team, but I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't offend anybody on either side. But a couple of them, my business partner Rachel, her husband Troy, diehard Democrat. Good, whatever you want to be. I'm not that guy. I think people should. This cool part about America is we get to believe whatever we want and support whatever we want. And whatever. But he was diehard Democrat, so like it didn't matter what it was. That's what he would do. And so every time I would come to, and then there was a couple of the other guys that weren't at all. And so politics were not allowed to be discussed on our job sites. But I would come every Friday. And every time I'd say something like, when I was walking out the door, I'd be like, "Did you see what President Obama did last night? That was," and then boom, it was like a bomb, but it was funny because they were all friends, but I'm not allowed to go on the job sites because it was funny to me, but like that culture of letting them know that like they could I would stir it up and then they would laugh and that they knew it was fun and not take it, not take it to heart so personally. But I think keeping it fun, keeping it light, but having extremely high standards. My first guy that like ran our jobs, his name was Mike Pickens, and he was funny, he was happy, he was always seeing the good side of things, but like hammer hitting the nail at 7:00. You didn't come walking in with your work bag at 7. You didn't park your car, like hammer hitting the nail, and he ran that like a tight ship. I think you have to have somebody with incredibly high standards and an incredibly high work ethic and also a positive, fun attitude. And it may take a minute to find one of those. That's our hardest thing, right? That's our hardest thing is in the real estate space is finding good contractors that we can trust and show up and keep that positive vibe.
Very true. All right, Jason, if someone wants to learn more about you, the work you're doing, what's the best way to do that?
I am Coach Jason Roberts on Facebook and Instagram. Well, Facebook remains to be seen, but if it comes back up, that's what it is. You can, my website, www.jasonroberts.tv. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Jason Roberts, you are the owner of REI Blueprint, found on the web at jasonroberts.tv. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Super fun.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If you like it, please subscribe, share this episode or this show with other people around you. The greatest form of a compliment is a referral. I really appreciate them. And if you think that you want to learn more about some of the work we're doing, I encourage you to reach out to CatherineCantey.com. You can schedule a call or just continue to read articles and information that we post out there. Thank you so much for being here.